right, it is the 13th day of the month of February 2025. Welcome to it. You are tuning into the NewsDesk right here on television, where we inform, impact, and inspire you. A jam-packed filled show for you coming up this evening as we be tracking down all the developments that you need to know in the world of news, the world of sports, and as well conversations that grow you and build you. Coming up in the political view, I'll be joined by the CEO of Project Youth South Africa, Sibahle Zuma, as we discuss was the SONA debate 2025, including a lot of opportunities for young people, or was it just another political speech? We'll try to make sense of those developments as she joins us a little bit later on at around 8 p.m. Not forgetting that I'll be joined by my news editor, Babala Manzana, as we try to make sense of every developments that has been happening throughout the week. You do not want to miss that conversation as well. And as well, of course, I'll be joined by my sports and wellness editor, who is Kotato Mashao, is going to be joining us as we try to break down and give all analysis of everything that has went down within the world of sports, and also what you can look forward to within the weekend when it comes to the very latest in the world of sports. And then, of course, we'll be bringing you much more conversations that you need to dive in. Of course, I want to hear from you. I like engaging with you. I love hearing from you as well. Today's poll question that we are asking you definitely has to be: do you think that the SONA address real issues facing South African youth? You have 4 options there. Your first option is yes, it provided real solutions. No, it was just a political talk. Somewhat, but more action is needed. And then I didn't watch, but I have my doubts, becoming your 4th option there. However you view it, do go onto all our social media platforms using the hashtag the NewsDesk, and using, of course, hashtag television 360 as we get across all the messages and across all your views on all the breaking news and fresh news that needs to be coming right here on the NewsDesk. Plenty on the go in our time together right here on television, where we inform, impact, and inspire you. If I were you, I would bring in my chair closer to get more up to date and up to speed with the very latest that is happening within the world of news, the world of sports, and as well conversations that grow you, because the Thursday edition of the NewsDesk begins now. Indeed, reporting live from Johannesburg, Soweto, I am Kagiso Sithole. It's always great to be in your company. Let's begin with the big stories of the day. The first story that we are tracking definitely has to be a somber story that we are seeing, as the remains of the 14 SANDF soldiers who were killed in the DRC return home. A short while, we just saw the president and also other dignitaries, including also the Minister of Defense, Angie Motshekga, there as they were welcoming the bodies of the soldiers that were lost in the DRC. The killing of the 14 soldiers was during the conflict between the DRC army forces and the M23 rebels, while they were deployed on an international or multi-international peacekeeping mission. This is the SNDF that have found themselves or losing their lives there, and definitely a lot of remarks and a lot of conversations were growing in terms of what happened truly there, and still we do not even have a way forward of understanding what really actually took place there, what actually took place for them to be killed even in there. But all we know is that they were deployed there for a peace keeping mission that was sent out there, and definitely we'll be tracking those developments and seeing, of course, of what actually had transpired there, what actually happened there, as we're looking at some of the developments that we are seeing transpiring there. Earlier this morning, one of the family members' uncle who is Obakeng Morero, who is the uncle of one of the soldiers that died, which is Itumeleng Morero, was there just talking about and sharing some of the incidents and sentiments around, of course, that the family members, had, of course, were anticipating the bodies to come on, as we all know that there has been delays on when the bodies are going to be coming, and a whole lot of delays that are coming there. But the uncle there was reiterating the fact that they are happy that now they can proceed with some of the proceedings. And in a report from some of the interviews that he has sent out, this is definitely what he had to say.
This was a very painful waiting moment for us, not knowing when they would be delivered into the country. And so this is a very desired relief that we've been looking for and praying for. So we're really grateful for the government for bringing our sons home.
So they've definitely there you are hearing some of the remarks from Obakeng Morero, who is the uncle of one of the soldiers that had fallen, Itumeleng Morero there. Obakeng Morero just say that they have been anticipating and they have been waiting for the bodies to be repatriated and being brought home so that they can start all the funeral services and start preparing for all the funeral that they need to take place there. But another thing that was causing some turmoil and some disregarding here has to be the fact that Jafta Dubazana, who is the spokesperson of Sandu, reiterating the fact that we are not even sure what truly happened, what truly transpired there within the DRC when we saw the killing that had happened. And he was in an interview with Wendy Mina from 702, and this is what he had to say in terms of the people
there. First of all, Mindy, thanks for the opportunity to have me on your music or radio show, and I would like to greet your listeners too. Look, this has been a very treacherous waiting period for the families and friends of our gallant fallen soldiers. We are happy that they are now at home. Even though, like I said, it took a long time. But given the situation that we are in, dealing with, rebels, people that can't be trusted at all, something like this was bound to happen.
Yeah, he also reiterated the fact that we're still not sure of what actually transpired to the soldiers, and we definitely deserve, even the families as well. They deserve to know what actually happened to their family members, and this is what he also alluded to that.
Mandy, that is why as a union we are calling for an inquiry around this whole deployment mission. More specifically, from the onset and around, what happened a week before the 22nd of last month, a week or two. So, as to exactly what happened, why during the days 22nd and 23rd, we lost 9 of our soldiers. So that whatever, outcomes, and we hope that those who are stationed there are the ones who are supposed to be coming to just inquire and telling us exactly what happened during those days.
Definitely still no answers of what truly transpired on the day when these fallen soldiers were, falling and also were losing their lives there as they were sent them. That is the 14 remains of this SANDF soldiers who were killed in the DRC returning home today. And in a ceremony that was held today by the President of South Africa and as well as the Minister of Defense in Motshekga, they were there as the families were welcoming the bodies there. As you can see in the picture there, you're seeing that these fallen soldiers' bodies are there being accompanied by some of the colleagues there, making sure and reiterating the fact that they definitely need to take charge. They were taking care of them even when we are not even sure of what definitely transpired there. But definitely President Cyril Ramaphosa is out there at the Swatkop in Tshwane there, where this ceremony was taking place, where everyone was welcoming the families and also the soldiers that have definitely lost their lives in making sure that they are building and they are making a peacekeeping mission within the country. So what happens next? Will there be a full disclosure of tragic events, or will it be another case of classified, unclassified or classified information buried to other people? Because that's another thing that we are seeing there. We are seeing the fact that these soldiers definitely need to be taken care of, and there needs to be more answers, especially when it comes to these, SNDF members being put back into their families, and the families are definitely are waiting and are eager to find out more of what had actually happened there into it. I'm trying to get a sense of what is currently happening in the live proceedings there, as we trying to find what is happening in the proceedings there, in a video recording, or rather proceedings from the SABC News. This is what is currently happening there. We're seeing that the SNDF members are trying to be remembered in a ceremony there. The SABC, they're trying to bring that repatriating and also that comments to it. Let's just listen in.
Need support through this difficulty. It's a path that has been chosen. However, in this instance, anyone who goes to war does not wish to come back in a coffin, but unfortunately this was the case for these 14 soldiers in the volatile east of the Democratic Republic of Congo. From where we stand at the moment, General, South Africans would perhaps ask, are our troops safe? Can we be...
Yeah, definitely a question that we are all asking. Are our troops safe? And is everything going to be set apart, and making sure that we are definitely, taking account, and the people that we are still sending there, are we still going to be able to afford? Are we still going to be able, to keep them safe, even in those areas that they are in? All right. You are up to date with the big story of the day, definitely tracking you for you that the 14 SNDF soldiers who were killed in the DRC are returned home, and finally family members can't make sure that they can prepare for funeral arrangements and all the preparations that needs to happen there, right? Before we give you we move more into more breaking news, another poll question that I've been asking you for the day is that, do you think that the SONA addressed the real issues faced by South African youth? And definitely you have 4 options there, and in those 4 options there, it's either you saying yes, it has provided real solutions, or you say no, it was just another political talk somewhat, but more action needs to be taken place, or you didn't even watch and you don't even have remarks that you can share in order for us, or in order for the repatriating to have happened there, in terms of whatever you stand. However you view it, we are here for you. I'll be bringing you all those results and bringing you all that you need to know about that. Ahead of our conversation, I'll be joined by Sibahle Zuma at around 8 o'clock as we take it to the political view, as we try to make sense of SONA 2025 versus the youth of South Africa. Plenty on the go for you, plenty still to come right here on the news desk, especially as we uncovering breaking news and fresh views. Right now, I am going to be joined in by my news editor, Babala Manzana, as we try to give you a sense of other developing stories just ahead of that conversation, just to give you a sense of what has been transpiring. Let's go behind the headlines. go behind the headlines just to track everything that has been making news headlines. And of course, I cannot do this on my own. Definitely, my news editor, Babala Manzana, needs to join me and to give me a sense of what has been happening. Babs, a very good evening and welcome to the news desk as we break down all the stories. The first story that we're tracking for people this evening has to be definitely be around the Putco Bus case. Babs, good evening and welcome.
Definitely. Good evening to everyone and everyone who's tuned in. Thank you so much, Kagiso. Well, I have to let you know that a lot has been happening on today's headlines. They're wild, their emotions, they're actually high. And honestly, some of these stories, I do feel like with the deck we are actually stuck in a loophole of deja vu, Can definitely tell you when it comes to the Putco case that 2 more suspects have actually been arrested, bringing the total of 4 accused in the case of those 51 torched buses, But now the real question I have to then actually ask is that, are we actually seeing a swift of justice, or are we then still, when it comes to these arrests, are we still in the mess around which is held accountability? That's the real issue here, We've seen so many of these cases where the foot, just give me a second there to apologize. I'm not sure if you're able to hear me there.
Yes, I am able to hear you, Babs. And I love the question that you are asking there, because let's not forget also about the attack that happened about 4 different depots, right? That's like coordination, that is organized and well-planned things. And it isn't just random vandalism. There is something bigger at play here, Babs, because we're not only just looking at, the buses just being burned down, but there are a lot of parties that are involved in this. Babs, I'm not sure if you are able to hear me.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
I think I'm experiencing a bit of technical. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you, Babs. You can continue.
As I was saying that I think we actually both know how these things actually go, Yes, as you were saying that there are steps forward, but where the masterminds, are they going to be held accountable? I think that's the real issue here. And like you're also saying that we've seen cases with the foot soldiers get caught, but the people pulling in the string walk actually free.
Indeed. A lot has been going on with that, and especially now, what happens to the suspects now? Are the suspects going to remain behind bars? It's a whole lot of question, because here we asking ourselves there that there might be a plot twist that has happened here.
Yeah. Definitely, exactly. Now with the bail hearing, I have to tell you, coming up, it's going to be interesting to see if these suspects actually remain behind bars or if we'll actually see them go back to the streets, as we know that these things actually happen, in time. And while we are on that subject, let's talk about the ripple effect. 2 Putco employees were also injured in this attack, right? Hundreds of commuters were actually left stranded, which is such a big frustration. And yet the bigger question once again remains that who actually benefits from these kind of sabotages? I think that's the real plot twist when it comes to it,
Yeah, definitely, because who benefits? Because I guarantee you that we'll be revisiting this case soon again, and we'll be seeing these incidences coming up. Just a few weeks ago, it was the Rea Vaya bus drivers who were gunned down in Soweto. So it goes to show that the lot needs to be done within the transport department, and the Minister of Transport needs to definitely intervene in these cases, right? Let's shift gears to something that's just concerning, such as SIM card frauds. Babs, in identity theft and digital wild west is just in the South Africa's telecom sector. A shocking 60 million SIM cards are being registered under false identity every year. If that isn't a crime crisis, I don't know what does this mean, Babs.
Oh, it's honestly scary, It's basically more fake SIM cards than they are actually people in the country. And, these aren't just being used for harmless pranks. This is actually how criminals actually coordinate kidnappings, your executive scams, and to actually avoid detections as well. It's quite frustrating.
Definitely quite frustrating in the sense that this RECA system was being put in place to make sure that we avoid certain things, but it actually
Yeah.
is failing, and it was meant to stop these kind of frauds, and yet millions and millions of people are still using that. And even now I see that even at Pakistani or Somalian spaza shops, where you see just random SIM cards just being sold, and people just take them and just insert them in their cell phones, and you wonder if the SIM cards are already being recorded, and if they are already being recorded, whose identity is being used? Is this what's the point of wreaking at the first place?
Definitely, that's quite a very interesting question, because now people will actually let you know that, you know what, no, this SIM card is actually registered in someone else's name. And the worst part, no one actually seems to be taking accountability when it comes to this. Like you're also mentioning that telecom companies actually blame the government, but the government actually blames the lack of enforcement and the criminals. They just keep cashing in.
Everyone keeps cashing into these things, but definitely we'll look into it and see. Definitely the big question here, Babs, has to be, how do we rethink the entire SIM card registration process? Do we make it safer for people, and how do we make sure that people do not use false identities, even with biometric verifications as well? Let us know your thoughts, those who are tuning in. What is your thoughts around this RECA systems, and that there are 60 million SIM cards that we are seeing? Using the hashtag the NewsDesk on all our social media platforms, we are at Television 360. Now let's talk about something else, which is the NHI, Babs. What is the very latest on that?
Oh, it's definitely, I have to tell that Motsoaledi is actually doubling down, saying that the NHI is here to actually stay. But let's be real. The DA Action SA and the private healthcare providers are not actually buying it. I don't know from your side.
Definitely, they're not buying it, Babs. And I see that the DA is calling it the State Control of Medical Aid Action. SA is saying that it's basically just another government-run insurance scheme. And let's not forget that this isn't just about healthcare, but it's about who controls billions of rands in the medical funding, and how do we make sure that there is affordable healthcare to all South Africans. I don't know, Babs, are you still there? All right, I see Babs is definitely having some network glitches there. But another thing about the DA's biggest concern has to be that public healthcare is already a disaster, and government hospitals are underfunded, understaffed, and mismanaged. And so the idea is the same, that the government now should be in charge of everyone's healthcare. That's where the trust issues comes in, especially when it comes to this point. Babs, are you still there? Right, seems like we have lost Babs there, definitely. But the concern here, the debate here, definitely is that the NHI solutions, or is this just another government project doomed to fail? Drop us your thoughts in the comments, because this fight isn't ending anytime soon. Definitely we want to find out from you, what is it? Go on to all our social media platforms using the hashtag the NewsDesk. We want to definitely find out, what is the NHI bill saying about that? Another story that we're tracking about is the Eskom again being in the hot seat again. Eskom's 180 million kickback scandal is never the looting rather never ends. Rather, the New Day News Eskom scandal, this time it's about 180 million rather in bribes of low value contracts. And if the sound too familiar, it's because Eskom is basically a corruption recycling plant at this point. Here's a wild part of ESCOM. ESCOM employees were creating fake emergencies just to award dodgy contracts. They were fabricating crisis and then handing out millions in contracts to their connections. It's as if that ESCOM is not learning from all these scandals that we have been seeing and all these scandals that have been keeping the state-owned entity. As much as we've been seeing that ESCOM has been a crisis of load shedding, show its forth that it's not only about that. This isn't only about incompetence, but this is about organized crimes. And the worst part, we are still the ones paying for it. Every time ESCOM loses money, they come running back to us with tariff hikes and load shedding. And, this is us as South African citizens, of course, bearing the consequences of these leaders who go in and extract money. Now the SIU is investigating, but will anything actually change? 5 employees are facing disciplinary actions and 3 cases have been sent to the NPA, but we have seen this before. How many ESCOM scandals actually lead to real-time jail? Because let's look at what had happened. A lot of executives have been put down. Brian Molefes and all of them have been put down, and there still haven't been no answer. There still haven't been no reactions to actually people taking accountability and going to jail for what they have been taking, because looming still continues even in ESCOM. That's the million rands question, literally. Let us know what you think. Should ESCOM be completely privatized, or can it still be saved? I wonder, what are your thoughts around the scam that is continuing around ESCOM and what we are seeing here? Still seeing people are still not taking charge into this, and definitely the ESCOM people are there, and they are not taking accountability, and that is what we are seeing. And it's definitely a tragedy that we are seeing there. I see Babs is back, and we are a hold of her. Babs, just with this last headline that we are seeing, that ESCOM's still looming into it, and the million rand question here is that what definitely needs to happen. Can it still be saved, or should it be privatized?
Well, Kagiso, I have to let you know.
All right, I see that we are having some technical network glitches there with Babs, but perhaps let's leave it there as far as behind the headlines is concerned. We'll bring you more breaking news and fresh news as we continue right here on the News Desk. Please do make sure that you do follow us on all our social media platforms, because our entire team is dedicated to bring you all the analysis on all the breakdowns on all the news that you need to know, right? As I did mention, that we'll be bringing you a conversation around the SONA Debate 2025, and the poll question that we are asking you today definitely has to be around: do you think that SONA 2025 addressed the real issues faced by South African young people? And you definitely had 4 options there. Your first option is yes, it provided real solutions. No, it was just a political talk. 3, some art, but more action is needed. And of course, I didn't watch, but I have my own doubts. However you view it, please do go onto all our social media platforms, even on our stories, using the hashtag the News Desk, or you can find us on all platforms at that is at Television 360. Right, I did promise you that conversation that I'll be joined in by the CEO of Project Youth South Africa, Sibahle Zuma, as we try to make sense of it all as it comes to SONA 2025 and the youth of South Africa. And we are going to be dive into that conversation in a short while. And without wasting time, I think I can see that she is here. And without wasting time, ladies and gentlemen, let us step into making sense of everything else that is in politics in the Political View. That time of the evening where we try to make sense of everything that is politics as we all know that President Ramaphosa last week just stood the stand and told us his plans with the government of national unity. And today it's no different. I am joined by the CEO of Project Youth South Africa. She's a writer, activist, and an advocate for youth participation in policy and governance. Sibahle is here joining us to give us a sense of what does SONA 2025 and the youth meet. Where do they meet exactly? Sibahle, good evening and welcome to the News Desk.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for accepting the invite. Let us start here, right? What was the SONA all about? And was it just all another political talk for young people, or did it really iron out opportunities for young people?
Great question. Let's get straight into it. So obviously the SONA was, well, not necessarily the first of its kind, but the first since our government of national unity. I think generally when Parliament is being convened for the new year, the president generally gives an address of the state of the nation, right? So in terms of where young people are, so the president mentioned a couple of things where young people are concerned. Obviously, we know that South Africa has a very high unemployment rate, right? So he mentioned things like your presidential employment, your social employment fund, and the National Pathway Management Network, and all of those are meant to create opportunities for young South Africans to participate in the economy, right? So I think in the past 2 years or so, the presidential employment stimulus has existed already. And I think we saw with the hiring of, as a general, not necessarily general assistants, but I think this one started in COVID, during COVID, where graduates would be learner assistants at schools. So that's been going on for a while. So he sort of repeated it this year. So it seems to be a long-term plan for the government in terms of young South Africans participating in the economy. But in terms of like, will it yield results? That's when it gets into getting into the nitty-gritties of it. So South Africa generally is a country with amazing policies, amazing laws that on paper sound good, but when it comes to actual implementation, there's always a disconnect between what was said and what actually is done. I think we saw with the teacher assistance thing that it started and then at some point it stopped, and thousands of young South Africans lost their jobs. Others were in limbo and they were not sure what's going to happen with their jobs. So I think we've heard this stuff before. Implementation, when we get to it, it never really works out. But then also I think the biggest critique that we as Project Youth South Africa have with all these interventions that the president mentioned and continues to mention in terms of there is no sustainability, there's no long-term plan. So I, as a young South African or a young graduate, could join or be part of these programs, but once the contract ends, it's done. There is no sustainability, there is no career progress from that. So I think it would have been nicer to hear what the plans are, because we, like I said, some of the stuff started during COVID and it's a continuous thing. It would have been nice, first of all, to hear success stories of the people who have been part of these programs and what the career progression has been. But then also it would have been nice to actually hear an actual implementation plan, because like I said, this has been done before. So obviously there should be lessons learned from that. So it would have been interesting to hear that. So in terms of what was said and what actually happens on the ground, I think there's still a large disconnect. And I think this year as well, we'll still find ourselves back here next year in SONA 2026, in my honest opinion.
It seems as if it becomes like a yearly ritual that we do that. Okay, there'll be plans, and then when it comes to implementation, it becomes a problem. And the youth of South Africa right now are, the crisis that is a big one has to be, finding jobs that are sustainable, finding quality jobs. And you were talking about the education assistance that, the contracts were ended, people were lost their jobs, and there have been a lot of programs that come in and go out and leaving a lot of young people stranded. What do you think needs to be done by the government to make sure that there is quality jobs for young people?
I think that's a difficult question to answer because I think all of us growing up, we knew which jobs were the safe jobs, you know. You knew that if you studied medicine, you were guaranteed a job. You knew that if you studied law, you were guaranteed a job. You knew that if you studied accounting, you would be guaranteed a job. And then obviously you had those degrees that I actually don't like this term, and I try to shy away from using it, where they call humanities degrees like useless degrees. But obviously, looking at the state of the world right now, you can tell that we definitely need humanities degrees. So in terms of what needs to be done, it's very, very difficult because you get situations where a whole doctor is unemployed, yet our hospitals are teeming with patients, but like there's a ratio of one doctor to 50 patients. So it's quite a jarring situation that we find ourselves in as a country, because obviously we are in a tough economic climate, right? So but also I think we do need to start having the conversation of South Africa's education system as a whole, right? Because we are moving away from traditional jobs. We are in the fourth industrial revolution. Some may even say fifth, right? So I think it's a thing that starts at the grassroots, right? So if you look at countries like China, their 3-year-olds are already coding, their 3-year-olds are already programmers. So I feel like it's a matter of overhauling the entire system. But obviously we are in a tough economic climate, right? So you can't really say that it's something that's possible at the present moment. But then also I think we cannot overstate the role of the private sector in assisting the government with actually providing jobs, right? So the private sector, looking at the economy and how things are going, they're looking for a specific type of graduate, right? And South Africa isn't producing enough of those graduates. So I don't really know what the correct answer to this question would be, because like I said, it's more a systemic thing. It's more overhauling of the system. But looking at where South Africa is economically and looking at the economic climate globally, what can be done, you know? So I think the government does have an opportunity, though, with the incoming young people, like your primary school children. I think a rolling out of more practical programs would help alleviate such a scourge in the future for the upcoming generation. I'm not necessarily saying it's too late for our generation, but I'm saying that there is an even bigger opportunity. We know where we are right now as a country. We know what led us here. Like I said, I'm a big advocate of learning lessons in government, in corporate, wherever. If we are trying to better South Africa, we see what's wrong and where things have gone wrong, right? So we have an opportunity to do better for the next generation. But then also we also can't overstate the role of some of us who are in certain institutions, doing certain jobs that would not be deemed traditional, right? So we have an obligation, right, to mentor students that are upcoming, help them structure their degrees in ways that create a graduate that can be channeled straight into the employment force. So yeah, my answer is quite long-winded because it's such a complex situation.
Definitely, it is a very complex issue because we're trying to find out where is the problem actually here. Because as you mentioned earlier, you're talking about that a lot of people are looking at humanities as something that is, low. Even in high schools, people who choose subjects of humanities, they're taken as people who are being lazy lazy, who, don't want to think and all that. And probably the problem might be in our education system, but as you did mention that it's also in the system. Do you think that young people are being put in place for decision making in our country, and how can we change that if not?
So that's a very that's a very important question, right? So I think where young people are concerned, there's not enough representation of young people in the spaces and tables that we're supposed to be on, because I think the main thing that people forget, or the government itself forgets, we are supposed to be the next generation of South Africa's leaders, but we aren't being called to the table, or when we are called to the table, it's usually for tokenistic purposes, a tick box exercise, a PR thing, so that people can see that young people have been in a certain space, right? I think we saw last year, after the National Assembly was convened after the elections, right? You saw those two new young people. I'm not sure if they're in Action SA, but I do suspect it's Action SA. Those two young people, I think they are in their 20s, so they were the youngest members of parliament. So it's two out of a National Assembly of how many people, you know? There are structures. There is the ANC Youth League. There is the AFF. I'm not sure if it's called the Student Command or what, but there too, there are like, young people who are fit and equipped to lead the country. But I don't think the old guard is ready to hand over that sort of power to young people, because I think there was an interview by the former president Jacob Zuma where he was basically saying that young people do not have the capacity to take power in South Africa. So these people are still holding on to the power. So there's essentially no space for us. But then also another problem of South African young people themselves, when we are invited into these spaces, there's obviously discussions that come about in those spaces, right? But then we never really implement them. It's very cute. It's very, I guess, very trendy for us to then post on our Instagram that, oh, I was in a room with Minister so and so. These are the things that were discussed, but then we will not hear anything about it until your next LinkedIn post, because again you were invited. But then in terms of implementing and following up with ministers, the people that do invite us into these spaces, we don't really do a good job of that ourselves. So there is the issue of the old guard still gatekeeping access to these spaces, but then there also is a problem of us as young people not actively getting into these spaces and doing something about it. I mean, the access thing is a bigger issue, but then something as small as coming together with those five other young people that you went into that room with and following up with the certain minister. I think I was in a conference not so long ago, and I'm gonna make an analogy with sales, right? So with sales, before you make your first sale, you most likely need to knock on a certain door a couple of times, right? So with the young people, it's like we went to this thing with, for example, back in 2018, 2019, I used to be in spaces a lot with Minister Barbara Creasy. So she's the one that I know that she was very open to young people in the space, right? So we would get there, we would eat, it would be nice, we would speak, be given a chance to speak. We wrote several statements that were read out at the COP27, COP26, all of those. But then when it comes to implementation, only like a handful of the people in those spaces have come together as groups to actually do more work. So I think if we can tackle the issue of, obviously, getting access will be a difficult thing. It's always difficult because obviously these people fought for the country. They feel that South Africa is theirs to govern until the Lord decides to take them, right? So then there is this thing of, as okay, there's five of us in this room, we've been allowed in this space. What are we doing when we come out of the space? What comes out of this space besides the LinkedIn post, which is really good? We love it. We celebrate it, but what's coming out of this is
definitely what
supposed to
is
be.
next. It's more than just, the post, just making sure that, there is more success for young people. To those who are tuning in, we love getting your comments, so you use that comment section there. Amugelo Ngcobo saying humanities is not useless. Steve saying that entrepreneurship should be the answer for Africa to most of the problems, which is one of the things that was leading to my next question, to saying that, are we equipping young people for the future as South Africa, or are we still like delaying the crisis and even putting more even into the crisis? But you'll answer that in a short while. Amukela Ngcobo saying that these old people must give jobs to young people. And then Steve again coming back to saying that jobs have a bottleneck because the companies can employ only so much people, but there is less focus on producing our own products. Are we equipping young people for the future?
That is another difficult question. I mean, in South Africa, we have basic stomach issues, guys, like issues at the most basic level, right? So other countries are way ahead of the curve. We're still dealing with teething issues, like something as simple as replacing pit latrines in schools, something as ensuring that our children have adequate food. There's obviously always the tension with the pass rate, right? People saying 30% is just, the thing should be raised up to 50. But like, I feel like our school environments themselves are not necessarily conducive to young minds that are supposed to be learning, right? So there are those of us that are fortunate to get into multiracial schools, right? IEB schools. The education that you're getting is obviously top of the range education. It sometimes allows you to get into Columbia, your Harvards and whatever. But like the young people that do make it into our South African universities, these are young people that have had to fight tooth and nail to even get into such spaces. You're going to school hungry. You're going to a school that has a leaking roof. You're going to a school that has very few desks. You're going to a school that where you guys, there's like 55 of you in a classroom and one teacher. So those young people that actually do end up making it, they don't make it because they're special or whatever. They make it in spite of the challenges that they face. And then you get into universities, there's only so much that a university can teach you about your career path, right? So, like I said, there are those of us that are fortunate enough to have come from spaces where you had access to a computer. Sometimes a young South African, you get in there with 7 distinctions, but you weren't in a school that does research. You don't know how to use something, a computer. So there's still so much that you're fighting for, that some young people get into the dilemma of, you fail your first semester because you're busy playing catch up with your other peers who are coming from better equipped schools. So in terms of, I can't say that we are producing young people that are going to be in the future, when things like AI and whatever other technological advancements that are happening, we are still way behind. And then obviously your privileged students are then in a better position, but also that's a very small percentage of students that have access to these kind of things. So I feel like we are not yet in a position where we can talk about the future as South Africans, when we still have teething issues that start at the most basic level. So your pit latrines and whatever. And I know like some people generally talk about how we should be embracing digitization and stuff. Our schools do not even have the infrastructure to support such. So there's a lot of work to be done, and it's been 30 years since South Africa obviously came out of apartheid, and these are things that we should ideally be seeing, right? And an improvement on the education system and all of that. But we are still finding ourselves dealing with issues of your state capture, corruption. People want to line their pockets because they believe that they need to be compensated for their suffering during apartheid and them getting into government. So it's like I said, South Africa's issues are very systemic. So you can't pick one and then be like,
Yeah.
this is what we can fix. It's like a
Whole
complete
lot
overhauling
of
of
drama.
a lot of things that are intertwined, right? But I think my main point that I'm always going to emphasize throughout this conversation is that it then becomes up to us who have fought and caught up to a certain extent with the peers that did well. You then have the responsibility to then go back to your old school or even have your own platforms where young people can access you and you can provide advice, walk them through this journey. That way you're able to help at least 10, 20, 30 young South Africans out of millions. But at the end of the day, like, you've done your part, you know.
Yeah, very interesting times to be living in South Africa, that young people will go to school and then the whole certificate will just be sitting at home. As you just mentioned, that it's a whole lot of a systematic thing. As we wrap up this conversation, Sibahle, let's talk about Project Youth South Africa, what you guys do there, and how can young people get involved in making sure that they are also part and send their voice and actually making their voice being heard in such decisions that needs to be taken for the country.
Great. So Project Youth South Africa is essentially a youth-led organization, so founded by young people and led by young people. So our main aim as the organization is basically to create more civic education for young people, right? So I think there is the issue that people always mention, that young South Africans have become apathetic, right? So we believe that young people should first of all be involved in the decision making process, but then also we believe that in a way we can bring civic education to people, right? So we have ambitious plans for the next 2 years, especially the first big project being the 2026 local government elections, right? So last year was 2024. So in the 2024 elections, the voter turnout was quite low in comparison to other years, but then also young people were one of were the least registered to vote, right? So one of our ambitious projects for the next 2 years is to get as many young South Africans to vote, right? Another thing is to get them to know who their representatives are, because in as much as we always talk about government, we speak of government at the national level. But most young people, if you could ask a young South African right now, who's your ward councillor? They don't really know who that person is and what it is that they can speak to them about. And these people are the people that you have elected or your parents have elected at the very least, because like I said, youth participation in the electoral system in South Africa has declined a bit. But then also another aspect that we hope to be able to I guess create more young, knowledgeable South Africans that are able to participate in the electoral system is Instagram lives like these. So young people are able to share their voices. We're able to bring people. I think if you might have seen in the past few days. So in terms of SONA, we had some representatives from some political parties speak to us about what their expectations from SONA are. So we're trying to bridge a gap between our our elected representatives and the ordinary young South African. So we're hoping that, first of all, we can get up to at least 50,000 young people registered for the local government elections. Obviously, that trickles into the 2029 national election, and hopefully we'll be able to see a better shift and maybe probably not another GNU again. Because obviously we can see that it's not working, but
True,
also at the same
true.
time, it's good to have options, right? So
Yeah.
it's good to be in a position where we can pick and choose who our leaders are. But then also I think the last arm that we're trying to get into is in terms of like employment, right? So with your humanities graduates, so that's something that we're going to roll out in the next few months. So sensitizing young people and teaching them the career the career paths that you can take with a humanities degree, and also try to get as much of our partners as well to open themselves up to having interns that are interested in the kind of work that we do. Currently, we are in the midst of forming a partnership with another organization that teaches financial literacy. So I think Project Youth SA is an organization that is basically trying to create a well-rounded, holistic South African that is equipped as much as possible for the future. First of all, in participating in decision making, in being an active citizen that contributes to the economy, but then also, in a way, trying to alleviate as much of the poverty as possible. Obviously, we will not do it all. And I think that's where it's important for us to then look at who we can partner with in the long term. But yeah, that is PYXA.
Definitely incredible work that you guys are doing there, and hopefully that we'll also keep our partnership and collaborating, especially as you was mentioning that the 2026 local government elections are coming and young people need to be informed and stay equipped in every part of the decision making that is happening within our country. Thank you so much, Sibahle. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your insights, and we wish Project Youth South Africa to, excel in those endeavors that they want to excel in.
Thank you for having me. It was really great to be here.
Thank you so much for your time. All right, that is Sibahle Zuma, who is the CEO of Project Youth South Africa, and just sharing with us what is it that SONA 2025 was basically saying to us young people and how we can grow about it. Lennon here saying that well done for having chats like these. Keep it up, guys. Humanities really needs one to take it up all the way to postgraduate level. Enjoying this conversation. Indeed, these are the conversations that we are going to keep for you, keep inspiring you and making sure that we keep you up to date and informed. Sibahle, thank you so much once again.
Thank you. Have a good night. Bye.
Bye. All right, it's plenty on the go. Just in a short while, we'll be wrapping up. And before we wrap up, of course, that I can't just wrap up without bringing in my sports editor to give us what is it that we can expect throughout the weekend when it comes to the world of sports. And our sports editor, Kgothatso Mashao, is standing by to give us the very latest in the world of sports. All right, that time of the evening where we take a look at what has been happening within the world of sports, what has been making news, of course. Definitely, my sports editor, Kgothatso Mashao, is here to give us the very latest. Kgothatso, a very good evening to you, and once again, welcome to the NewsDesk.
Oh, thank you. Hello, Kagiso. I hope you're good. And the people of sports, it's my time now. I hope you guys are good. I hope you guys are okay. It's about time we get straight into it,
Definitely getting straight into it. I'm very well, Kgothatso. There's a lot of interesting developments happening, especially in the world of sports, which is the next Usain Bolt, we might say. A teenage sensation talking about the athletics world by storm, while everyone has been talking about Australia's GOAT. There is a 15-year-old Brit who's been smashing records. Tell us more about that.
Kagiso, that's insane, honestly. 10 to 30 seconds at 15 years old. Hey man, that kid is breaking records, hey? And that's faster than Usain Bolt, like Usain Bolt's best time at 14. Like he's actually beating his time at 14, which has like a 10 to 57 seconds. And it's not just a lucky run. He's consistently clocking times that would make him compete at the senior level, And for example, his 10 to 30 seconds sprint will have placed him third in last year's British men's 100-meter championship. Like the champion finals. I don't know if people were watching that or paying attention to that, but yeah, it will place them last. But let's just let it sink in for now, and get this. If he had clocked like that time back in what you call it, in 1996, he would have made the Olympic finals, like at just 15 years old. And imagine at that age, you are running in the finals against who? So let me just say he's doing
Yeah.
his best runs at 15. Like
At
he's doing the most.
age 15, you are doing most. I don't know, Khotasa, is it too early for me to saying that this is the next Usain Bolting in the making, or yeah, I'm rushing into things?
Oh, no, 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 no. It's way too early. It's way too early to say this is the next losing ball. But Kagiso, this is beyond promising. If he keeps what you call progressing, staying injury free and continues to improve his technique, we could be looking at the future Olympic gold medalist. And mark my words when I say this, the world better keep an eye on divine thing.
Very much. We are keeping a closer eye. And something that we are also keeping a closer eye has to be that Proteas were punished in Karikai, from record breaking. Let's talk about how Pakistan knocked off South Africa out of the tri-series with 7 wickets win. And honestly, our bowling attack was torn apart. Potato, what went wrong for the Proteas?
Like that's the good question. What went wrong? Like, if the Proteas had to join this live, my question is, what went wrong? And Kagiso, like, where do I even start? Like, bowling was a disaster. The Protea posted a decent total of 353 runs, but Pakistan chased it down comfortably. And the biggest issue is the 4th-wicket partnership between who's this guy? Mohammed Rizwan, that's his name, and Salman Agha, who put together a second breaking of 260 run stand, and look at our bowlers. Who's this guy? Win Muller went for like 79 runs, and Lungi Ngiti was all over the place, and even Maharaj. Yeah, I think that's his name, Maharaj, our most reliable spinner, couldn't get top to the floor of runs. And like, what do we say about that, guys? So like, like the question is still the same.
What happened?
What happened?
I see what you're saying when you're saying the question is
happened?
what really happened. But let's not forget about Pakistan and got off to an explosion start off. The first 50 runs came in just 32 balls at the point. It was game over. So this is just a bad day at the office, or the Proteas are showing deeper weaknesses.
So like, what can I say? It's deeper than just a bad day. Like, it's just deeper than the bad day. This match exposes our inconsistency in big pressure games. We are inconsistent in big pressure games, and this is just showing the world how we are. And we have, like, the truth is we have talent, but we have talent, but what do we do? Like, what do we have? And like, do we have the mental strength and tactical awareness to close out our games? Which is the question right now. Do we have that? But for now, Pakistan is off to the finals, and the Proteas, they have a lot of questions to answer before the next series, and then risk, what you call risk, permanent damage. Like, he fought well, but franchise was another level. Yeah.
definitely interesting developments that you're keeping for us in check. And I know that on Monday you will bring us the Weekend Chronicles to kind of give us a sense of other top stories that are making sense. But let's take a look at what is still to come in this past weekend before we wrap up, ahead of football starting in the PSL fixtures. Kgothatso, which of the PSL matchups stands out for you in this coming weekend?
A lot of games are coming. Let's not forget Valentine's is not for women anymore. We're watching games. But let's go. 18 February, Richard Bays versus Royal M. There's a game at 7:30, and TS Galaxy is also playing versus Stellenbosch FC. 7:30, 19:30, which is 7:30. Cages Chiefs versus Supersport United. It's also playing at 7:30. But for me, Cages Chiefs versus Supersport United is the big one. I mean, ever since Paris lost, so I'm looking forward to this one. Is the big one.
Don't get
Chiefs
us
needs to
started.
bounce back from their recent struggles. like I was saying, Chiefs needs to bounce back from their recent struggles, and SuperSport is in solid form. Look at it's in
Very,
solid form. So yeah, this one is
yeah,
yeah. So this one is going to be a battle for the
yeah.
top four.
Definitely going
Finish.
to be a top one. I was saying to you, don't get us started with the Chiefs and the Pirates thing, but definitely Kaizer Chiefs need to definitely bounce back. I'm also looking forward to that. Do you have any predictions, score predictions? And
With
Super
Chiefs and hey, I don't want to predict anything. Hey, Chiefs can be a biggest disappointment when you don't expect it to be.
you
Hey,
won't
Chiefs can
bet your money
disappoint
with
you.
Kaizer Chiefs. But let's shift into the English Premier League, Kgothatso. I know you're keeping a close eye on Man City versus Newcastle game. What are your thoughts on what's coming in the fixtures?
So, before you go to there, let's just say, like I said, Valentine is coming. We're not watching anything. We have Brighton versus Chelsea, which is going to play at 10. And Saturday on the 15th of February, Leicester City versus Arsenal. It's going to play at 2:30. Manchester City versus Newcastle, they're going to be playing at 5. And West Ham versus Brentford at 5 2. So, when it comes to Man City versus Newcastle, Man City has been disappointing us lately, like they've been disappointing. And I heard one of their comment was it was because of their coaches going through a divorce, which I mean that's an excuse for me. It's one of the lamest excuses you could ever hear a player say or a team say. But looking forward to this game, I just hope Man City just has to win this one. If Man City just makes it to the top 5, that's enough for Man City fans to not cry. For them to know that their team is still standing well. Anyway, me, I'm taking it. Liverpool, I'm taking it regardless. I'm fighting to take it, which is there shouldn't be any topic about me. Like as much as there shouldn't be any topics about me. But looking forward to this game, I hope, and I pray it's going to be one of the exciting games, and I pray Man City wins this one, so that for once they can shut up. For once, like they can clap hands and stop complaining about Madrid beating them. I mean, they had to. The Madrid had to beat them. So I think they deserve this one. They just have to come in form. They just have to be ready. They just have to be looking. I hope the coach is not gonna do what he did when they were playing against Madrid, swapping players like that, which is dangerous. So yeah, Kagiso, I'm just looking forward to
Yeah,
this game,
it's
and I pray
always
it's
indeed
not the biggest.
a great time to be looking forward to all the sporting action, especially when we're going into the weekend. Young underscore saying that great analyzation indeed. Kgothatso always analyzing with us, giving us the very latest in the world of sports. He'll be back again on Monday to give us the weekend chronicles, all the updates that you need to know. As much as he did say that he doesn't want to predict, because Kaizer Chiefs is something that you cannot put your money on, but definitely he'll be bringing us some also other exciting news on that. Also, he'll be joining us again on Tuesday to give us analysis as well. Thank you, Kgothatso, so much. It's always a pleasure for having you dropping by to give us the very latest in the world of sports.
The pleasure is mine, Kagiso, and like I said, let's see and let's just watch the games, people. And we'll break it all down
We'll
next
break it
time.
all
Thank you
down
very much.
again next time. Thank you so much. That is our sports editor, Kgothatso Mashau. Have a good evening.
Good night, Kagiso.
All right, that's how we wrap up the Tuesday edition of the News Desk right here. Not the Tuesday, right? It's Thursday. Ooh, right. The week has just gone as quick as possible. The Thursday edition of the News Desk. We are back again live here on Tuesday as we're bringing you another conversation around student protests. As we're seeing that the first week has started and there has been a lot of student protests. We'll be joined by an organization, Right to Protest, to try to make sense of it all. You don't want to miss that conversation. And then our African news editor, Sean Mwenge, is going to be joining us live from Kenya as we are going to be taking a look into what has been happening within the African continent and trying to make sense of it all. And of course, Kagiso Sithole back again, giving us the very latest in the world of sports. Don't forget that Tuesday, again, it's our appointment together right here live on television 360, where we inform, impact, and inspire you. Have yourselves a magic weekend ahead. And don't forget that it is Valentine's Day. Kgothatso has just mentioned it. It's not only for ladies, it's also for men. Go watch all the sports. Until we meet again, look after yourself, take care, and good night. Bye-bye.